Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. Now, the sole administrator of Rivers State, Vice Admiral Ibok Ete Ibas, retired. This week approved the appointment of administrators for the 23 local government areas in the state. This came less than 24 hours after a federal high court restrained him from making such appointments. The sole administrator also approved the constitution of the boards of some agencies, commissions, and parastatals. In a related development, the sole administrator cancelled all pending procurement and tender processes carried out by ministries, departments, and agencies in the state. According to him, the action became necessary following a Supreme Court judgment and the absence of an appropriation law within the period. The sole administrator directed all MDAs that carried out these tender processes for projects in their respective offices to refund these fees to the respective contractors. Now, this is a situation of, I wish I had done something better. Clearly, that is exactly what is going on here, because now everybody is going back to how this entire situation started. How we began in Rivers State with the situation that happened with the legislature, how it eventually got down to the vandalizing of several pipelines in the state, and now the state of emergency that we are seeing at work in Rivers State, Nigeria. Now, it might be important to note that it is a big conversation that people have been saying that separation of powers has not existed in Rivers State for the longest time. But as much as that is the case, it's hard to talk about this situation without going back to the unconstitutionality of the emergency rule in the first place. So really, I don't know why anyone is surprised by what is happening. When impunity starts, when we begin to take the law for granted, it's only bound to continue. Some people have argued that there's nothing wrong with what the administrator has done, because where there is an emergency rule, we know that technically there's a lot, everything is on hold in the state, especially as it pertains to laws pertaining to the political powers. Criminal, civil cases can still be tended to, but with the emergency rule, the administrator basically takes charge of everything that's going on in the state. Some people have argued that there's nothing wrong, but there's also another faction that finds this just completely wrong, saying that there is a breakdown of democracy in Rivers State. I feel like we're beating a dead horse by complaining, really. It started with the emergency rule. We talked about it. We complained about it. There was no one held accountable. Nothing happened. So whatever happens today, I don't know why we bother talking about it, because nothing will happen.
I don't think so. I hold a contrary view.
I would love to hear it.
The point about governance and democracy is that you must continue to talk. You must continue to interrogate what is there, which is why the courts are always there, to intervene.
But what happens when there is a clear, because we need to, that's why I said it's like beating a dead horse. What happens when the courts are there, but there's no respect for that? And we make reasons as we justify the reasons, we make excuses as to, we forget that this is a hallowed chamber. It's not a matter of, we cannot argue the decisions. When a judge makes a decision, it's supposed to be sacrosanct. That's why there are things called judicial precedents, to say that in future, other cases that are similar to this, people can look back and say, in the case of XYZ, this is what the decision was, which is why we're bringing it forward to this case now. But there's no respect. Judges make rulings, and we'll be debating with the judges like we went to study law with them. So it doesn't just, that's why I said beating a dead horse.
That's not how I see it. I choose not to be a pessimist.
Am I a pessimist?
I'm just saying.
Come on, Steve. Pessimist.
Yeah, I mean, if you're questioning why we or the media will keep on interrogating the system, I get your point. I'm just saying that that's our job. Frankly speaking, many of the issues that we're discussing today are not particularly fresh. States of emergencies were declared in 2013 under Jonathan, in 2004, in 2006 under Obasanjo. People interrogated it, and it's because of the issues that came up, at that time, and the sort of interventions from the judiciary, from the courts that came up at that time. That's why people are a lot more vociferous in the positions they are taking now to say that, oh, there's a precedent, this is how we think that we should go about it. I get your point about Ibokete Ibas seemingly not respecting, the position of the court as to appointing, administrators like himself to govern the local government authorities. But of course, we haven't had the last on the constitutionality or otherwise of him being there in the first instance.
That's why
the PDP governors have taken the matter to the court. It hasn't been decided yet. So when we make submissions about something is either constitutional or not, no, let us always wait for the final statement from the Supreme Court. That hasn't been given in this instance. Of course, we know that anything that runs contrary to democracy and constitutionality, seemingly, we have to condemn it. But there are two slightly different issues here. The issue of is the president empowered under the Constitution to declare a state of emergency if he thinks that certain conditions were met to warrant it. And then the other far more naughty component of it will be, even after declaring a state of emergency, does he have the power to appoint a sole administrator? Those are two distinct things that have been taken to the Supreme Court by the PDP government.
And removal of a governor in a state.
Yeah, it comes with it.
Once
you appoint a sole administrator, of course, that means that
so you see why I said what I said. So in the sense that it's not about, we are here to enlighten and let people know what's going on, and that's what we will continue to do. But this entire week, everything we talk about on the week that was is a reflection of the topics that have trended all week. Yeah. And we've seen different stakeholders involved in this situation, political allies and stakeholders come in to give their own analysis. And you can see, especially from people who are in River State, the reaction to this decision has not been taken lightly. PANDEF has come out to openly criticize this decision, to say that this is dismantling the democratic structure of the state, which is why I said there are two sides to the case. But if we continue to look at our constitution like it is bread, where people can pick and choose what they want, and it is open, the constitution is clear. But if we have to now say, oh, every time something goes wrong, we ignore the Constitution and wait for it. The
Constitution, Kachi, is never clear.
That's why
it's open to interpretations. That's
what part of the Constitution is... So are you telling me now that your freedom of expression is not clear? Your freedom of association is not clear? So as a lawyer, I can infringe it because I'm a lawyer. I can say, I can infringe on you and justify it.
When you infringe on it, I go to court for interpretation to protect my right.
Why do you go to court?
So that it can be clear to you who's trying to infringe on my right.
You're going to court because you know I have infringed, not because you think I have.
But I may lose. I may lose at the court.
That's what I'm saying. That's the point I'm trying to make. But what is right? That now becomes a matter of technicalities.
Don't let us deviate. Just very quickly before we move on to the other matter, is that what is happening in Rivers State speaks to the heart of what SAN Owonikoko said to us on this program the other time, that even when you have a defense for the president saying that he has declared a state of emergency, there is a window for those who oppose it, those who are in support of the constitutionality of Nigeria, that democracy should not be dismantled. There's a window for them to go to court, as the PDP governors have done. So there is another layer to the reason why they must go to court, and why other people in Rivers State, should go to court, should go beyond just protesting on the street and go to court. That is the point of what Ibokete Ibas is doing, acting like a governor. He was never elected as a governor. He's a temporary caretaker in that office. And then when you now go into appointing sole administrators, sometimes, we are told that he has appointed people that are related to one or two of the principal players in the Rivers politics. That is a ground for people to go and challenge it in court, which is my point about saying that we're not beating a dead horse. It is our job to continue ceaselessly to interrogate, what is happening.
Just to clarify, I wasn't talking about us, the journalists. I was talking about the people, the people involved in this. While I
they shouldn't get tired. They shouldn't get tired.
They shouldn't get
because
tired.
Part of what Ibas must remember is that whether he leaves in 6 months or in 1 year, in 12 months, which is the max that he can spend, his photograph will not be in the row at the back as a former governor of Rivers State. It is important for him to bear that in mind so that he doesn't get carried away and he thinks that because
I have to give it to the administrator, the sole administrator, to say that in all of this, I don't think he is getting carried away, if I'm being honest. Because
so why
if you
is
look,
it dissolving agencies, appointing these?
That's what I'm saying, because I would think,
behaving, acting like a governor. Since he assumed, he has spent a couple of weeks now, very quickly, Kachi.
Yeah.
I have not heard or seen him lead any delegation directly to say this is what we are doing to protect the assets
now
in Rivers State, which was at the core of why the president
I don't think
announced.
that the sole administrator is acting in isolation of the powers that put him in that position. That's the point I was trying to make, to say that in all of this, everything that he is doing is a clear reflection of the authority that put him in that position, because he is a sole administrator. I don't think he can.
It's him that we can see. That's why we're judging him and interrogating.
But we could see the authority when Fubara was going, he was going out of line. We could see that authority coming.
Governor.
That's my point.
Ibas is not.
But he was put in that position regardless. Are you now justifying his appointment as a sole administrator to say it is not constitutional?
But I was speaking to the contrary.
That's what I'm saying.
Surprised that you still don't get it.
That's what I'm saying. I get it. All I'm just saying is that he is acting in accordance to the powers that put him in there. So I don't think it's fair to just look at him alone. I think we should look at it holistically. But like you rightly said, we shall move on.
He's the one that should account for it. All right, we move on. A faction of the Labour Party, backed by the governor of Abia State, Dr. Alex Otti, and the party's 2023 presidential candidate, Peter Obi, has passed a vote of confidence in the National Caretaker Committee led by Senator Nenadi Usman. The faction requested the Caretaker Committee to conduct ward and state congresses that will culminate into a national convention. It also welcomed the judgment of the Supreme Court, which sacked Julius Abure and its national leadership of the party. Our Rice correspondent, Omo Bazwai, tells us more.
Court, and the court below, recognizing Barrister Julius Abure as the national chairman of the first respondent, are hereby set aside.
Riding on the strength of Friday's Supreme Court verdict, this faction of the Labour Party, backed by the governor of Abia State, Alex Otti, and the 2023 presidential candidate of the party, Peter Obi, is claiming victory over the ruling they claim has sacked the embattled national chairman, Julius Abure, and the rest of his National Working Committee from office. For them, the verdict of the Apex Court has finally laid to rest the protracted leadership conflict within the party, marking the dawn of a new beginning for the Labour Party and the reawakening of a potent opposition force in Nigeria.
It is indeed a triumph for the rule of law, good governance, and for all who stand for the truth, and sincerity of purpose in seeing that those with the best interests for our dear party and country are allowed to validly proceed accordingly.
In trying to rebuild the party, the vice presidential candidate in the last election, Dati Baba Ahmed, cautioned members to learn from their own mistakes and avoid the pitfalls suffered by PDP and the governing All Progressive Congress, APC.
Learn from history and do not be afraid. Right now, there is no space for anybody in that misruling party. And they have destroyed the opportunity for anybody to contest in that old party that wanted to misrule for 60 years. What does that leave us with? Labour Party.
Governor Otti and Obi also expressed relief that the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the National Caretaker Committee, while Obi dispelled speculation that he plans to dump the Labour Party or is in talk with some groups. Otti extended an olive branch to Abure and those still with him to seek their swords and join in the task of rebuilding the party.
Some have speculated all sorts of things. Some have even said, oh, he has left the Labour Party. Some of us are on our way out. Some of us are on our way this. Let me assure you, we are Labour Party members.
The faction then passed a vote of confidence in the National Caretaker Committee and mandated it to conduct congresses at all levels, including organizing a national convention to elect the next generation of leaders for the party ahead of 2027 general elections.
This House hereby
ratify the executive committee led by Senator Dr. Nenadi Usman as the authentic leaders of this party and mandate them to continue with the processes halted after the 4th of September last year mandate.
In the meantime, both factions are circulating the certified true copy of the Supreme Court judgment, with the faction backed by Alex Otti taking it upon itself to deliver a copy of the judgment to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. Omo Bazwai, Arise News.
All right. It looked like Labour Party was in disarray, but after the Supreme Court judgment, it looks like the party or a faction of the party is trying to pick the bits and pieces of the party together. But it's obvious that that party, which came third during the general elections, presidential elections of 2023, is sadly factionalized. Julius Abure, of course, from the pronouncement of the Supreme Court, is no longer the chairman of that party. And from what the Dr. Alex Otti-led faction, shall we say, is saying, Senator Nenadi Usman will now lead the charge of the caretaker committee and try to, put up a rebirth, if you like, for the party, given that by this time next year, everybody will be talking in terms of who is running for what, for who and everything. So I think that this is an important development for the party, and given that the former the presidential candidate of the party in the last election, with his running mate Peter Obi and Babadati, Ahmed, were there, I think that will send some strong signals. Victor Ume was also there, 2 members of the party, to say that we are not divided. This is our party. We have taken charge. We are taking control. And that the next 2 years, leading to the next elections, if all the principal players stay within the party, because you never can tell what will happen in terms of all the coalition talks that we are
seeing coming.
Hearing.
Are you thinking we're going to see anybody leaving? Anybody aligning?
24 hours in politics is a long
It's
time.
a long time.
But then even if you're going to align, you'll be coming up with a solid position. And I think that part of what they're trying to do is to have a unified bloc within the Labour Party, that whether they will run it alone for 2027 or they would align, at least they want to have a semblance of unity.
You like alignments, too. You like alignments.
Politics,
you always
is about alliances,
towards
isn't it?
an alignment. You're hoping for that. I can see it. I feel like what would you say would be the most shocking thing, the most shocking alignment we would see come 2027?
If we hear from Daura that if we hear something strange from Daura, given that politicians have turned Daura to a mecca or some sort, those who went there, a couple of days ago.
I know.
That for me would be an indication towards a possible, game-changing moment. But if Daura, knowing his nature, knowing the fact that he hardly fights for anybody, if he stays calm as he has always stayed, then I'm not sure that I would expect anything spectacular
from this season
in terms of coalition. But these are early days.
Exactly.
These
are still early days. And I'm, like you rightly said, I think this is a very, very... I also like how swift this was. There was a judgment. It was accepted. They're heading over to INEC. They're going to change to NWC. That is Abure's NWC. So I think that's just exactly how it's meant to be. But let's talk about something that is really interesting now. The Office of the National Security Advisor, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, has identified social media, for instance, TikTok and Instagram, as platforms used by extremists to propagate violent views. Now, this comes as the NSA advocated the urgency of revisiting Nigeria's 2017 National Action Plan to adapt to the evolving landscape of extremist threats. Arise correspondent Ferdinand Duroha reports.
In a renewed effort to strengthen Nigeria's response to violent extremism, the National Security Advisor has declared open a pre-workshop for the policy framework and National Action Plan for preventing and countering violent extremism. A major subject of discourse is the growing influence of digital and social media platforms. Representative of the NSA, Hidayat Hassan, says extremist groups continue to evolve, exploiting new technologies and online platforms. She advocates that security strategies must be proactive, dynamic, and aligned with both national priorities and global standards.
True and important is also the issue of digital radicalization and emerging technologies, which has already been talked about since we started this event. Extreme narratives are spreading fast on TikTok, Telegram, WhatsApp, and even gaming platforms. It's becoming the new frontier where we now hold debate. In fact, in the last 10 days, TikTok removed more than 2,400 contents just targeted on this in Nigeria.
The threats we face today differ from those of previous years, and they will undoubtedly continue to evolve. Therefore, our responses must remain dynamic, proactive, and effective in countering emerging challenges.
Established in 2017, the Policy Framework and National Action Plan for Preventing and Countering Violent Extremism aims to address the root causes of violent extremism. As Nigeria re-strategizes to curb extremists, participants are expected to evaluate the framework, identify gaps, and propose forward-looking strategies to ensure that Nigeria remains resilient in the face of extremist threats.
And this year, the European Union, with the support of a member state, what we call Team Europe, is launching projects worth 300 million euros approximately in grants for the Northwest and the Northeast. Because we know that these are the regions in particular most affected by extremism and also by other socio-economic challenges.
8 or so years ago, back in 2016, not long after Hidayah was formed, staff from the Hidayah Centre met and cooperated with colleagues in Nigeria to develop that first policy framework. And 9 years later, we are here together again, thinking about how the policy framework and National Action Plan generally can drive and shape Nigeria's efforts.
Ferdinand Roja, Arise News.
Yeah, I think this is very important information, especially because it's important to remember that as much as social media can be used for good, it could also very, very quickly be used for a very untoward behavior. So it just stays a fact that we just need to remain vigilant as we use the platform. Be careful what we share, and fact checking is very important, ensuring that we're not sharing any information that we are not sure of. And I'm really impressed with this one, because some people might misunderstand the point of this conversation to say that, oh, but we use social media for good in Nigeria, but it can also be used negatively, and I think that's the point that is being made here.
I get that point of what Hidayat Hassan said on behalf of the National Security Advisor, Nuri Badu, and of course that if anybody is speaking on behalf of the NSA, that's very weighty. The NSA is a very senior, highly powerful, very important personality in the corridors of power, and when he makes this kind of submission, it is important that the media listens attentively. Given the precedent that we have witnessed the other time, if you remember, the former Minister of Information, Ononkulai Mohammed, things during NSAS and all of that eventually, led to the suspension of Twitter as at that time.
Yes, I remember that.
So when you are hearing things about TikTok, about Instagram as platform for extremism, we should be careful.
We should.
Of hasty generalization. Yes, all these digital platforms have a way to censor, extreme and extremist views, and that's what we should encourage. And at the same time, also encourage the recourse to our laws. And there are sufficient laws in Nigeria to deal with that issue. But when you now start being overly, making sweeping statements and targeting specific social media platforms, we should be worried.
Yes.
And we should, plead caution to those who are saying that, so that at the end of the day, it doesn't amount to gagging citizens and especially gagging the media. Go after those with extreme views, prosecute those that are found wanting, deny them access through collaborations with those platforms. And we have seen it in many different parts of the world that has happened. But then don't let us be sweeping. Don't let us be hasty in generalizing, so that it doesn't amount at the end of the day to gagging people. The media, of course, do use many of these platforms to propagate news and information, and that has to be said clearly. Part of the reason why we have to be careful is the fact that just last year, if you remember, this government was trying to replace the National Broadcasting Commission Act with another bill proposing to give more powers that to seek to control social media. It is important to be on the alert, and that's why many of the associations in government, NPAN, Nigerian Guild of Editors, Nigerian Union of Journalists, are always speaking up on behalf of citizens to say that let us be careful, let us listen to everybody before we arrive at submissions that might appear as if freedom of speech would be endangered.
I agree. This takes me back to the TikTok ban, albeit less than 48-hour ban that happened in the US, where President Trump had said very clearly that he believes that the information that is being gotten from the users in the US is being disseminated, especially because it was owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company. And we saw the sweeping reaction to that prior to when he came into power to say that, you know what, there is a problem here, but we're going to see how we can manage it, because the number of people using the platform for good definitely overshadowed the issues that had been raised with regards to the ban. So that just speaks to what you've just said.
Even for the good part of it, part of what Nigerians should learn is that TikTok is not just for banality. Let's learn from how in other climes they use it for educational.
Of course, we have a very progressive content creation space, a progressive creative economy in Nigeria that I would say social media is almost the bedrock of. That is an industry that I think we still haven't tapped into yet, and I'm hoping the government looks into it a lot.
All right. And finally, on the week that was, the Caribbean island of Dominican Republic has been in mourning this week after at least 221 people died following the collapse of a nightclub rooftop during a concert in the capital, Santo Domingo. Funerals began Thursday as rescue efforts concluded and attention shifted to recovering bodies from the rubble. More than 500 were injured and dozens remain unaccounted for after the structure gave way during a performance by merengue legend Ruby Perez, who was among the deceased. President Luis Abinader has declared 3 days of national mourning and ordered the Commission of Experts to investigate the tragedy. Victims included high-profile figures such as former NBL players and foreign nationals. Actress Zoe Saldana and rapper Cardi B, both of Dominican heritage, join others in expressing grief. Authorities pledge to ensure victims are identified as families continue to search for answers. Our condolences to the people of Dominican Republic. I mean, that was such a major tragedy.
Yeah.
I watched the video several times, and I can imagine that, people who are, people like me, people like your good self, who are into entertainment, into the arts. I mean, we could have been among those people, having fun, even covering the thing. But look at the number of people who are dead now, sadly, because of structural defect, in the facility where that was happening. Our hearts go out to those who have lost their lives and to families of those who are still remaining.
Absolutely, Steve. It's so heartbreaking to think that, especially for Latin America, merengue is in the top 3 type of music that we see. You have bachata, you have salsa, and then you have merengue. So that means a huge population enjoys the music. It's like our Afrobeat here. So you can imagine the number of people that were there. It's just an incredibly sad story. And our hearts definitely go out to the people who have lost their lives and the fans of the people as well, like Ruby Perez. This is just such a huge loss, such a huge loss.